Media reports say the US and Russian officials are working on a peace proposal that will see Ukraine concede territory to Russia and scale back its military. The news emerged as Ukrainian President Voldymyr Zelenskyy travelled to Turkey to meet with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in an attempt to revive efforts to end Russia's war. Turkey has already hosted a series of talks between the Russians and Ukrainians and wants them to return to the negotiating table. Well, DW correspondent Marielle Müller joins me now from Kyiv. Marielle, this draft plan gives Russia just about all its demands in return for some new US security guarantees for Ukraine. Tell us more about the plan.
Yes, so according to an unnamed Ukrainian official, Kyiv would have to surrender the entire eastern Donbas region, even parts that Russian forces have not captured. And just to put that into perspective, according to military observers, at the current rate of advance, Russian forces would have to fight for another 4 years to seize that territory. Also part of the plan is that Ukraine would have to accept Crimea and other occupied territories to be part of Russia. It would also have to relinquish some of its long-range weapons and shrink its military significantly. Also part of the plan is a ban on foreign troops anywhere on Ukrainian-held territory. And as you said, in exchange for that, for all these concessions, the US would grant Kyiv security guarantees, but we don't know how these guarantees would look like in detail.
This is pretty much a worst-case scenario for Ukraine. Zelenskyy has repeatedly rejected these conditions. What's been the reaction in Kyiv?
Yeah, exactly. So there was also, again, an unnamed Ukrainian official who spoke with the Financial Times as a reaction to this plan, and he basically said that this plan is heavily tilted towards Russia and that it would be very comfortable for Russian President Vladimir Putin. And he also basically said that this plan is a non-starter for Kyiv unless there would be major changes made. And the general sense here, in fact, is that this plan was drafted without any Ukrainian involvement, that it actually represents the maximalist demands that the Kremlin has been making throughout this war and that Ukraine has always denounced as nothing but a capitulation. And it's interesting how President Zelenskyy reacted to this. On Telegram, he posted a statement talking about yesterday's meeting with President Erdogan, but also mentioning President Trump. And he said, the main thing for stopping the bloodshed and achieving lasting peace is that we work in coordination with all our partners and that American leadership remains effective and strong.
Now, people in Ukraine are tired. 4 years of war or into the fourth year. They want peace. But do you think that there's any appetite for such an unfavourable deal?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the desire among Ukrainians for peace is strong. As you say, now nearly 4 years of war, people having to endure rolling blackouts. We've seen the horrific images coming from the western city of Ternopil the other night, 25 people at least killed, also people being burned in their apartments, basically, also among them children. So these horrific images take a heavy toll on Ukrainians, of course. But on the other side, we've just returned from the eastern Donetsk region where we've seen Ukrainians still living in frontline villages and towns, not willing to leave their home and their land, still, of course, having a deep connection to that, even though FPV drones are circling above them, artillery is pounding their town or their city. So it is, of course, clear that Ukrainians, they don't want to give up easily. And the sense that we got is that they want a just peace and not one that is dictated by Russia.
All right, thanks, Marielle. That's DW's Marielle Müller in Kyiv. European Union foreign ministers are in Brussels to discuss the latest developments in the Ukraine war. The ministers will meet with their Ukrainian counterparts to discuss Kyiv's most urgent needs. Other key issues on the table include imposing further sanctions on Russia, as well as how to fulfil their funding pledges for Ukraine. And for more, I'm joined by our Brussels correspondent, Anchal Fora. Anchal, a hot topic today will surely be the draft peace plan for Ukraine, drafted by, as we just heard, the US and Russia, that sidelined Ukraine. Europe was also sidelined in this draft proposal. So what's their reaction been there?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's far-fetched to say that phone lines are ringing. Even in the past, Europe has been sidelined. It hasn't been on the table, but then it has been on the table. People here, several leaders here have said that, of course, they don't like the fact that they were sidelined. They confirmed that they were not consulted, but also the fact that Ukraine wasn't consulted either. And they're saying for any such talks, any such proposals, Ukraine must be on the table. Now, the French foreign minister a short while ago said, from whatever leaders here have heard, which kind of implies that they haven't been shown this proposal yet, from whatever they've heard, it amounts to capitulation. It amounts to giving in. And that's something that the Europeans have opposed, essentially holding the line saying Ukraine must decide. Now, when it comes to the three key points that have been reported in the press about this proposal, whether it is giving up territory or reducing the size of Ukraine's army, or, not having certain important weapons, the sense here is that this kind of offers Russia what it wants, but doesn't give Ukraine enough. The big concern here has been that whatever peace is decided upon, whatever lines are drawn, it should be ensured that Ukraine isn't attacked again. And if it isn't strong, it isn't just about Ukrainian security, but also European security itself.
Indeed. New sanctions on Russia and its so-called shadow fleet will also be on the agenda. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, shadow fleets, the Europeans have been talking about the shadow fleet for a very long time, and this is a difficult problem to resolve. It's very difficult to police these ships in the middle of the sea. Russia has been running hundreds of these tankers. Essentially, what this shadow fleet does is it hides the origin of the cargo and the destination of the cargo and does evade sanctions. The bloc has tried many ways. They've had some success, but not all the way. A short while ago, I got to speak to the Polish foreign minister here and asked him, what do you intend to do? And he said, we intend to shut it down. But that's easier said than done. One idea now floating around is to sanction the countries whose flags are flown on these tankers, to sanction the whole ecosystem, to sanction the ports where these ships dock, to sanction the refineries where this fuel is refined. How is that going to work out is something on the table today, and we expect the EU to up the pressure and try and impose more sanctions on more entities involved in this trade.
All right, Anshul, thanks very much for that. Anshul Fora in Brussels for us.